Hey, somebody give the place a shove.
What is that?
I think this motel is surrounded by soldiers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Best Care Anywhere. I am your fair to Midland administrator, Anthony, joined live via the airwaves from his den of voyeurism, fetishism, and a few isms we've never even heard of. Ethan.
What I do in my den is between me and, well, I was going to say God, but God hasn't stepped foot in here in a long time. So,
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're currently in your doomsday bunker somewhere in secluded Northern California.
Yep. In the shadow of Mount Shasta, where the cult that lives within can only peer at me.
Lemurians.
Oh,
The
yeah, that's what they're
Lemurians.
called.
Yes. How are you? You're traveling. You're a traveling boy again.
I know. I'm always traveling, but I'm good. I'm doing what I do best, and that is driving long distances and wrenching on cars. So, what can I say?
This is true. So what is the purpose of your visit this time? Is it
Oh,
just recreational, family, business, pleasure, court?
Well,
What?
you know, a little column A, a little column B. I was, by some lack of judgment on the bride's part, invited to a wedding, so I got to go check out.
I forgot about the wedding you were invited to, and we're going to talk about it later.
Yes, we are.
Oh
Yes, we
boy.
are.
Okay. Very cool. So you did not drive this time, which is an interesting choice for you.
Yeah, one I'm never making again. No, I will always drive.
What
This
did you
was a
do?
mistake.
What happened? I thought last I heard you had a direct flight to Reno.
Are you ever gonna let me live this down?
No, because you are hilarious. Ethan, did you read the fine print?
Well, to those of our faithful listeners still in the audience, they will know that I have a war against basic reading comprehension and critical thinking skills. So no,
And bureaucracies.
yes, that too. So no, I did
So
not.
what happened? What happened was let me tell the story from my point of view, because this is the second time this has happened in a sense for me. Ethan tells me I'm gonna fly this time. I'm like, good for you, Ethan, because you drive like a maniac sometimes. And what I mean by drive like a maniac is this is the man who went from Northern California to the center of Kansas in 23 hours, 26
Yeah, that's
hours.
right. 23.
You're that's disgusting. That should be illegal, which it based on math it is. But I get a text from him saying, or we were talking on a call or something where he's like, "Oh yeah, I got a direct flight to Reno this time." I'm like, from Kansas? That's weird, but okay. I look at Snapchat the day he's supposed to be flying out, and I'm like, huh, Ethan's in Albuquerque. Ethan, why were you in Albuquerque?
I know I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque,
Oh,
because
God.
while it was, in a sense, a direct flight.
No. It was not a direct flight. That's not. What you
I
saw was zero connection flights, and you're like, oh, so it's clearly Kansas City to Reno. No, that just means you don't leave the airplane, Ethan. So where did you inadvertently go on this whirlwind tour of everything west of the Mississippi?
From Kansas City to Albuquerque, from Albuquerque to Burbank, from Burbank to Reno.
Oh my God. You now what is usually the option? Like Kansas City to Seattle, then Seattle to Reno, or like what's the usual route?
Usually I lay over in Denver.
Mm.
So, usually you have like an hour's layover in Denver, and then it's to Reno, which is fine, which is good, which makes sense even.
So now with rational hindsight, would you prefer sitting on the same airplane for how long? From the time you left Kansas, got on the airplane in Kansas City to when you got off in Reno, how long was it?
8 hours.
How long is it normally from Kansas City to Reno with a Denver layover?
6.5 at the worst case.
So it's not like the worst.
No, no,
edition of
no.
time.
It's
Who
just I like to bitch and moan.
who did you get to acknowledge from a distance?
Oh yeah, yeah. Hey, Weird Al Yankovic, if you're out there, and I know you're not.
No,
That
we
was
know
me.
you're a fan of MASH.
Yeah.
Look at the man. The man, that's clearly a man who like stands Alan Alda based on how he dresses.
Yeah, you know what? Really, Weird Al, come on, we'll have you on as a guest. You know what? You could write a parody of "Suicide is Painless." I don't know
Oh
what it would
no.
be, but I would absolutely
Oh,
provide backup vocals for it.
Polka
Yes.
suicide is painless.
Oh
Jesus
my God.
Christ.
So yeah,
So you saw Weird Al.
Weird Al got on the plane in Albuquerque with a ukulele, and I looked at him and I go, I know in my heart that that is Weird Al, and we made eye contact, and I nodded at him, and he nodded at me, and then sat down some rows ahead of me.
So like you didn't fanboy, but you're like you're just a normal person trying to fly on this normal plane. Respect.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
pray to God that that's. I hope in my heart of hearts that that was Weird Al and not just some shaggy-haired older gentleman. Like not to say Weird Al's old, but he is older than us by a lot.
Well, yeah, you know,
I hope you didn't just nod at a stranger with a ukulele.
he's
But
wearing it gracefully. Like his hair is starting to gray a little bit, but it's like he's still got the really long, down past his shoulders, really curly hair. But it's just got a touch of gray. He's wearing it well.
I feel like this is like one of those Craigslist misconnections. Weird Al, we could have been friends. Reach out. We could have sat next to each other, Weird Al.
We could have collabed.
Oh God.
Weird Al
I
X
I
Wilson.
feel like Weird Al getting on a standard Southwest commuter flight in Albuquerque, New Mexico with a ukulele case is the most Weird Al thing he could possibly do. like you said, yeah, Weird Al got on the plane in Albuquerque. I'm like, yeah, he probably did.
And he got off at Burbank.
You know what? Honestly, I'm pretty sure he's from Albuquerque, and that flight would make a lot of sense. I don't know if that's a true fact, but you know what? Cool.
I would believe it. I would believe it.
No, he's
I
from
mean,
Linwood, California. Never mind.
Well, you know what? I choose to believe he's from Albuquerque.
All right. Well, good. You visited me. You visited family. Fabulous. We love it. You met Weird Al in passing, maybe. We hope. So yeah. Now that we're done talking about that, let's talk about some MASH. So thank you all once again for tuning into the season 1 wrap-up episode. That was a lot of fun. Thank you for giving it the love we hoped it would get, even though it's a 2+ hour podcast. Before we completely leave season 1 in the past, I will point out a couple things. People were a little surprised by some of our top and bottom 5s that we talked about, which fair, it happens, but I will say this. Someone pointed out, "Oh, why is this episode so low, or why is this episode so high?" And I made the point in one of the replies I made to Twitter. First of all, I forgot to mention when I posted the top 5 to Twitter, I forgot to specify that these were just season 1. So a lot of people are like, what about these 17 episodes from all the rest of the show? And I'm like, season 1, I had to reply to the tweet and just go, it's season 1, megaphone emoji. It's season 1. But no, the other part is we did have a very narrow sample base for a lot of those episodes toward the beginning. And we're a MASH podcast that is listened to by mostly people who really have strong opinions about MASH. So I will say this. I said earlier in the show at some point in the previous season, once we're done with season 1, we're not going to take any more submissions for season 1 ratings. However, because season 1 was the first season we covered, obviously, and our audience was smaller, I will say this. If you are listening to the podcast right now, you're hearing my voice, and you've just maybe binge listened to the first season with us, and you're like, dang, I missed my opportunity to rate season 1. I will let you send us your season 1 ratings on 2 conditions. 1, you email them to us. You don't message us on Twitter, and you send us all of them. Or if you were able to get maybe the last couple episodes in live, send us a bunch of episodes at once, because I don't want people like, oh, Cowboy was 5 stars because I thought it should have been higher in the rating. No, no, no. If you're a fan of the podcast and you genuinely want to rate all of the season 1 episodes, you can email them to us. The code word is, what should the code word be? Pineapple. Code word,
Yes.
put pineapple in the subject line. Give us your season 1 ratings. Only if you did not have a chance to rate them live, either on Twitter, Instagram, or via email. And I will I'm not going to update. I'll update them on the back end, but I'm not going to come on the podcast and be like, oh my gosh, this episode jumped up in. When we eventually go over the whole series in one big wrap up episode at the end, your ratings will still count for season 1. So the season 1 code word is pineapple. You can email us your season 1 ratings. If I see season 1 like comments on the tweet from way back, I will most likely ignore them. Maybe not. We'll see. Long story short, if you missed out on season 1, send your ratings in. I'll try to add them. If you email them, there's a 100% chance I'll add them. Anything else, it's in the air, because I'm trying to keep up with the current ratings. So
I'd like to.
I did want to throw that out.
I'd like to add to that. When I inevitably get doxxed because I say something really stupid, if you send me a piece of fan mail, and I do mean fan singular because I'm sure there's only one of you out there that likes me, if you write pineapple above the address, I will personally send you back one of the many nuts I have broken off of a car. So, just a little added bonus.
That's a weird giveaway offer, but all right.
Well,
on the subject of season 1 ratings, we got tagged in a post on Twitter, and I need to address this because I tried not to be too controversial when we rated this episode at the beginning of season 1, but this thing that people tagged me in just got me so annoyed that I had to address it, and I'm gonna upset some people. So we got tagged in a tweet by our friend, this lightsaber kills fascist, good old Mike Jameson. And he shared a Stacker.com article ranking the best MASH episodes of all time. Stacker created the ultimate definitive list of the top 100 MASH episodes of all time based on fan-generated IMDb ratings. I like IMDb for looking up information. I do not trust the fan ratings on IMDb, just for a variety of reasons, because things can get spammed a bit, and especially with MASH being such an older show, there's kind of the same problem we had with season 1. How many people are going to IMDb and leaving their rating for MASH? You know what I mean? Unless they feel very strongly about specific episodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ethan,
yes.
I'm not gonna give away. I would like to revisit this article in the far future after we have watched the whole series and kind of compare it. But there is one season 1 episode that is in the top 10, nay, in the top 5, nay, in the top 3, that the fact that it's there boggles my mind. I would like you to guess which season 1 episode is ranked number 2 out of all 251 episodes on IMDb.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask a couple of probing questions first.
So I'll tell you these 2 things. The number 1 rated episode is rated 9.4 with 720 votes. The number 2 is 9.4 for number 1. Number 2, the episode that I'm annoyed about, is 9.0 with 578 votes. Okay. Which season 1 episode, this is an episode we have talked about. Which season 1 episode is rated 2 on IMDb? Okay, guess. I'll let you guess.
Well, not even guess, just a question. Is it one we did not necessarily like? I'm not saying it was bottom of our list, but it was definitely not in our personal top 5.
Let me see where it is on our list. It just missed out on top 5. It is number 6.
Oh, okay. Is it? You know what? I'll pull one out of there just out of curiosity. Is it the Ring Banger?
No, that is this episode. is higher than Ring Banger in our list, which is a travesty, in my opinion. But the episode that is ranked 2 out of 251 is Tuttle.
No.
So here's the thing. I love MASH a lot. I like the episode Tuttle. I gave it a 4 out of 5.
Sure.
It is not the second best episode of the show by a long shot. Even, I can name, so here's how this, I'm going to explain how this Twitter thread went down because it was hilarious. Another MASH podcast, MASH477, that's their Twitter handle. It's MASHcast with Rob Kelly over at the Fire and Water Podcast Network. Go listen to him if you haven't. He is very, very. I thought I was a MASH nerd until I heard this man's podcast. Oh my lord. They said Tuttle at number 2 is worthy of a Section 8 discharge. I as us, the podcast, responded, we like Tuttle, but the fact that it's almost always second above so many other episodes is truly ridiculous. Exactly, says Mike Jameson. It's good. It's a good, funny episode, but with all the amazing writing on the series, it is not second best in his opinion. And then we said, I can probably make name at least 20 episodes that should be above it. A few off the cuff are, and I rattle off a bunch of episodes. And basically, the opinion of the real big, the way too nerdy about MASH people is no, honey, no, not even close. And this goes to something I said on that episode. I like MASH, but some of the episodes that people fawn over and quote constantly are just not. They're not bad episodes because MASH is good overall, but it's like, I don't know. It boggles my mind sometimes what people latch on to. Kind of like,
well, yeah, and we've talked about
like,
this a little because you are a bit of a visitor on the more prevalent MASH boards of the internet, and I remember specifically you were telling a story of how you'll see polls. Oh, who's your favorite doctor in the 4077? And
Tuttle.
90% of the answers are Tuttle. Lol.
There's like an uncanny valley of MASH fan, and I'm not trying to gatekeep. I'm not trying to be bigoted. I'm not trying, but it's something I've genuinely noticed in MASH communities. You have people who are just discovering the show. You have people who are pretty familiar with the show and like it, and then you jump over the uncanny valley to people like me, Mike Jameson, Rob Kelly, Chief Smash Forever, who are obsessed. And then there's this like uncanny valley where people like MASH so much they start to parody themselves a little bit. Where like one of the other episodes is Love Story.
Mm-hmm.
People quote Bach constantly and think it's one of the funniest things said in the series, but I'm like, it's funny in the episode, but there's so much better quotes from this. I don't know. Mike, you got me heated by sharing that, and I'm stressed out now. So yeah, if you like Tuttle, I'm not saying Tuttle's a bad episode. I rated it 4 out of 5. I like Tuttle. It's funny, but it's not better than a bunch of the episodes in this show. And it hurts. It hurts me that it's second place. And I'll be perfectly honest. I don't know how I feel about the first place episode. And man, I wish, like, I understand why it's at the top of the list, but I don't know that it really should be at the top of the list. I think it should be in the top 3 or 5, but the fact that it's number 1 is like, I get why it's number 1 because it has the most people voting on it because of the episode that it is. Like,
well, just to be clear, the number 1 is the series finale, right? Like, you don't have to spoil that for me.
Weirdly, no, it's not.
What do you mean? No, it's not. What? Don't spoil it because I'm still new to this. You're still introducing. But what do you mean it's not the series finale?
So I want to say Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, which is the series finale of the show, is where is it on this top 100 list? I'm gonna find it real quick because I think its location is actually pretty interesting. It's definitely in the top 100. It's number 7, which honestly, I'm okay with that because there are episodes that are better than the finale, in my opinion. Because the finale, it's basically a TV movie. It's a different MASH than MASH, the TV show. So, and there are things about it that I like and things about it I don't like. But we're 10 years from that point.
Yeah.
Just going down to the season finale or series finale, and this might be a. So, for example, the series finale has 3,020 IMDb user votes compared to the number 1 episode that has a little over 700, and Tuttle that has 578. Like, I would venture to guess that if those same 3,000 people that voted for the series finale also gave their opinion on number 1 and number 2, I bet their rating would go down. I bet it would average out a little more. My guess is that people who really liked episodes on IMDb or really disliked episodes on IMDb probably have kind of weighted the vote. But that's my opinion. And I say that as someone who very clearly is asking people to send in their ratings, and I get that. But I don't know. I'm looking at some of the season 1 episodes and how they're rated on IMDb and looking at how we have rated them. Our list makes more sense to me than IMDb's. But again, I just thought it was interesting how vastly just different IMDb's list was to ours so far. But again, that is a conversation for another time when we actually have all of our data to compare against. But yeah, Tuttle is not the second best episode of MASH, everyone. And if I feel like accepting that is how you achieve the highest plane of MASH, like fandom. Like, I don't know. It confuses me so much, and I need to stop talking about it because it hurts. So yeah. Again, if you like Tuttle, awesome. But if you liked Tuttle and this is your first watch through of the show, you're gonna love the entire show. Because Tuttle is really good, and there's episodes that are somehow still better than it. Moving on from that. Actually, no, we're not. Ethan, if I told you right now, yeah, no, Tuttle is 100% the second best episode of the entire show, what would you think about the rest of the show going forward?
I would stop watching. I would leave this podcast.
Oh, no. You're just saying that to make me smile. Okay. All right. We have screamed about episode from season 1 far enough. It is time to leave season 1 in the past and move on to season 2. I know we said we were going to do the movie, but due to circumstances beyond our control, it was just going to be easier to do this episode while Ethan was traveling and a couple of other things. And there's another thing I'm going to address at the end of the episode because it was an unintended consequence of something, and I need to kind of get in front of it. But we'll get there at the end of the episode, so stick around. We're going to talk about the first episode of season 2, get season 2 rolling. We will watch the movie probably later this season once we've got a couple episodes in. But for now, we're going to talk about season 2, episode 1, Divided We Stand, aired on September 15th, 1973. So there's about a 6-month gap between season 1 ending and season 2 beginning. And we talked about it way back at the beginning of the podcast, but I'll remind everyone that MASH did not do well in its first season as far as on paper goes. It was not a highly rated episode or series. It was not in a good time slot for a lot of shows at the time. It was going up against, I believe in one of the interviews, Jamie Farr says they were up against Wonderful World of Disney at the same time slot. So no one was going to check out the new Army Doctor show, right? So yeah, CBS decided to move MASH to Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Allegedly, this was at the request of the wife of CBS Studios. There was some pillow talk allegedly about how she had liked the new show and wanted to see it go for a second season, and apparently that worked because they got this new time slot, and people kind of also discovered MASH in the off season as
Mhm.
the episodes reran, and they kind of were interested in seeing where it went. But genuinely the biggest thing that helped them was the new time slot, Saturday at 8:30 p.m. And it was strategically put between All in the Family, which was another big sitcom at the time, and the one, if you'll remember from last episode, that Wayne Rogers gave credit to setting up MASH for success, basically. And then the Mary Tyler Moore Show right after at 9 o'clock. The two biggest shows on CBS, they were basically the intermission between the two. And yeah, needless to say, I think this is one of those watershed decisions for MASH that caused it to be as popular as it did. I don't know. I think the show would have been okay if they didn't have this time slot, but the number of new people that were able to see the show because of this time slot is wild. So because of that time slot, they knew that they were going to have to kind of basically relaunch the show in a way to all the new viewers, basically. So they basically set this episode up, Divided We Stand, as a second pilot, which, yeah, it works very well. And we get that right off the bat. Oh, by the way, this is directed by Jackie Cooper and written by Larry Gelbart. Larry Gelbart was at the time the main writer of the show, so it makes sense he's writing this kind of relaunch, if that makes sense. And Jackie Cooper, we've seen before directing Ring Banger, Dear Dad, Showtime, and this season I'm going to call the Jackie Cooper season, because he will end up, this is the first of 10 episodes he will direct in season 2. So he directs almost half of season 2. But so we get in, we see Herb Volan back as General Clayton, and he is talking to Captain Hildebrand, division psychiatrist, played by a gentleman named Anthony Holland. As is tradition on MASH, this is his first and only appearance. His previous acting roles are a lot of bit parts in TV movies, and television shows. I saw on his IMDb page that he had an award, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Turns out that award was a Razzie for Worst Supporting Actor in The Lonely Lady. So
Wow.
Yikes. So yeah. Whoops. Yeah. But as this is basically an introduction of the new characters, I'll ask, how did you think they did as far as a season 2, basically a season 2 pilot?
I have some thoughts, but I think they're more general towards the entirety of the episode, so I'll save them for the end.
Okay.
I thought as an introduction to season 2, really well done.
Okay.
It does really feel like a pilot. It's a new season, and they kind of introduce the characters again in a way, but you're really right back into the fold of the Korean War. So I thought in terms of the beginning of season 2, it was well done.
Yeah. So Clayton is basically worried that the 4077 is under too much pressure, and perhaps it would be best served if they broke up the unit and kind of spread their personnel around to other units to kind of relieve the tension, as it were. So he's going through, and our introduction to the camp is essentially through General Clayton's eyes. So I'll quickly go through the things he mentions about the various cast members. About Henry Blake, he says he is a good surgeon and a fair to middling administrator, which, yeah, that's a fair description of Henry. He's a dedicated doctor, but doesn't necessarily want to be in charge, but he is, so there we go. Radar basically runs the unit, which is also fairly true. We have Margaret. described as an angel of mercy, which, based on General Clayton's interactions with her, yeah, that tracks. Burns is competent but a prude. Hawkeye and Trapper are qualified but a handful. So, with that preparatory statement, Hildebrand is sent to the 4077th, and we as he's explaining this, we get little vignettes of each of these characters, which they're as you expect. It's Henry on a date with his new fling Leslie, Radar getting Henry to sign 27 different papers, Hawkeye and Trapper rewriting the commandments in Frank's Bible, Frank and Margaret being, well, Frank and Margaret. Nothing too crazy. Very similar to the opening of the season 1 pilot, where you see everyone kind of being their weird selves. So we open on a surgery scene as Clayton is giving his final instructions to Hildebrand. Pretty standard surgery scene, I'd say, for compared to the beginning of season 1, less goofy. Like I've said previously, each surgery scene we get gets a little more set in reality. It gets a little less slapstick and goofy and just kind of regular banter, which we see a lot of, which is kind of nice, because the beginning of season 1, it was a little too goofy in surgery, I think. But now we get what MASH will be kind of standard for as far as surgery. Just busy work, lots of background noise, the occasional weird situation they have to deal with, like they roll up an injury with white phosphorus burns, which are terrifying, because white phosphorus burns on its own in the presence of oxygen. So, yeah, that's not fun.
No, thank you.
So, Captain Hildebrand arrives at camp and he meets with Henry, and cat's out of the bag right away. There's a possibility that the unit will be broken up, and that sends Henry into a panic. Henry is not good at dealing with the military command structure, and that is very much on display here. He's panicking, wondering why they're breaking us up, and Captain Hildebrand's just trying to do his job. But what now that we've actually got to meet and hear words out of Captain Hildebrand's mouth, what do you think of Captain Hildebrand?
I thought it was
because I know you've been pining for a psychologist to join, to be more of an occurring factor in the camp.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Captain Hildebrand. I thought it was a good idea, because I can't remember which episode it was in season 1, but I remember saying, "Man, I really wish they would bring a real psychologist into the fold and actually like let him take a look." So you're introducing this relatively normal human being, military personnel still, obviously, but a military psychologist into the 4077 to observe, and just it's as if a normal human being was put into all of that buffoonery, and I think that it's just a hilarious concept.
Yeah, it's that sigh has a lot behind it,
I
and
know.
again, people who know. The episode you're thinking of was Bananas, Crackers, and Nuts. That's where
Right.
Hawkeye and Trapper are trying to get some R&R while Henry's out of camp, and they bring in Captain Sherman, Margaret's friend, to try and evaluate Hawkeye, and he basically catches on to Hawkeye's ruse right away. But you had mentioned it would be nice to have a psychologist be a recurring character. I don't know if you caught it when I said it earlier. This is Anthony Holland's first and only appearance in Niche. So
Yeah.
You unfortunately will not be seeing Captain Hildebrand again. But what did you think of Henry in this scene? Because I love McClane in this scene. He's just in a constant state of panic, misspeaking, oversharing as to how much alcohol he drinks. Just he's failing successfully.
Yeah, this is Henry Blake at his most Henry Blake. He's faced with, a military chain of command and is trying to, save his own ass, but failing miserably. It was, yeah,
And
McLean
Radar
Steven is a treasure.
isn't helping.
Yeah, no, of course not.
Because he brings some brandy to the colonel, and he brings 2 glasses that are, I don't drink or have drunk brandy, but I believe you're supposed to put a little bit in the bottom of your glass and sip it. Radar brings in 2 absolutely brimming full glasses of brandy. And then Henry tries to save face and be like, Captain Hildebrand doesn't want any. To which Radar, probably very honestly and not jokingly, says, well, then I won't bring his in. Implying that Henry is going to drink both of those glasses of brandy. Which, also not a good look. But... And I do love Anthony Holland's facial expressions. Like, he's just wide-eyed staring at Henry like, what the hell is happening?
His facial expressions get so much better though when
Oh, yes.
when Klinger comes in.
And I
Oh,
love how Henry tries to be like, well, just let me know when you want to interview them so I can prep them on what to say. He's like, oh, no, there won't be any interviews. I'll just be watching what you all do. And he's like, God damn it, we're screwed. We're so screwed. And I do love how Henry just nonchalantly is like, oh yeah, show him in, and then realizes, wait, it's Klinger. No. And he can't. Klinger's first appearance in this season is more akin to what we're going to get out of him for the foreseeable future. Just he's in dresses, but he is a functioning, productive member of the unit, despite that. He's just trying to get the right person to see him in a dress to want him kicked out of the army. So he comes in his green evening gown and flowers in his hair. And I love how Hildebrand looks up, looks at Henry, looks back at Klinger, starts writing notes. Doesn't say anything.
yeah.
Just observes and writes notes. And there's this weird beat of silence, and Henry goes, I can explain that. And Hildebrand just goes, so can I. I don't know.
Such a
Hildebrand
great
is
line.
not here for that. So Henry is just more and more flustered. Hildebrand goes with Radar to get situated in the VIP tent. And we see that Henry is trying to go around camp and alert the other officers as to what's going to happen. So he gets Hawkeye and Trapper out of bed, brings them to the shower, and explains that Hildebrand's trying to split them up, but it's better that we stick together with the goofballs that we know than go to other units where we got to deal with new people, which Hawkeye and Trapper rightfully kind of look at each other and nod like, that's a fair point. And they promise Henry their cooperation. Henry then visits Margaret, which clearly means he's also visiting Frank. And I love this. Frank and Margaret are listening with rapt attention to Henry and get argumentative when they're accused of being the ones that are snitching to the general about how goofy the unit is. And through all this, you notice Margaret and Frank are have buttoned each other into each other's shirts. And it's so good. It's so great. And I love when Henry leaves, they both go to unbutton the shirt, and Margaret just kind of slaps Frank's hand out of the way. So
It's a very good representation of them.
It is. So Radar and Henry meet with each other. They're going over the notes of things they need to prepare for, make the place look more GI, hide his golf clubs, all that. But lo and behold, their planning is for... hang on, I love Radar. I took all of Klinger's bras and I burned them. Well, okay, that's a bit much. And meanwhile, observing all of this and completely in the know of what's going to happen the next day is Captain Hildebrand, which I kind of like that Captain Hildebrand is not an idiot. He's like, okay, all right. We awake the next morning to Reveille, which is a first for us in this show. And I love how clearly it's being played over a record and the record skips. And I love Hawkeye's give the place a shove and someone shoves the record player and it plays more. It's that kind of comedy from MASH I love so much. Trapper, Hawkeye, and Frank agree to play nice while Hildebrand's here, despite the fact that there is a appendix and possibly tonsils in Frank's boots, which is disgusting, and I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it so much, Ethan. I can't.
Don't put your boots on tomorrow.
No, I'm glad that using human anatomy as pranks in this show go away, because I hate it. No. So Captain Hildebrand greets Henry Blake. They head over to the mess tent while we hear that Henry Blake's togetherness lecture will be given later that evening. And I'm going to point something out now. We're in the mess tent. Captain Hildebrand is being introduced to Hawkeye and Trapper to where Henry has to make up on the spot why Hildebrand's there. So he says he's here to observe. Hildebrand covers by saying your surgical technique. Hawkeye asks, "What's your or is it Hawkeye or Trapper that asks what's your specialty?" I don't want to short Wayne Rogers. I only have subtitles on.
I believe it is Hawkeye.
Of course it is. Hawkeye asks, "What's your specialty?" Without thinking, Henry answers gynecology, to which Hildebrand has to cover and go, ear, nose, and throat. Which, that's Henry.
So close.
So close. So close. But I don't know if you can have the episode up in front of you or not.
I can.
Okay. Behind Hawkeye and Trapper in line is a nurse who we have not met before. Do you see this nurse?
She's purty.
You think so?
What
That is Nurse Kelly Yamato, played by Kelly Nakahara. She is currently an uncredited extra, but I am happy to report that this is her first of 167 MASH appearances. She will become a regular. She is a named regular nurse who is not Nurse Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta Echo. She is easily one of my favorite secondary characters of the show. She gets some she has one episode in particular that she's very well known for her contribution to, but the nurse, she is the first, not right now, but she will become a more regular occurring person in the show. So Nurse Kelly, woo! I genuinely, upon looking back, I did not realize she appeared this early in the show. And there will be gaps. We may not see her for a while, but later as the show progresses, she gets screen time a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. So, yeah. Anyway, it would be a mortal sin of the MASH world if I did not point out Nurse Kelly right now. So,
well, it's so weird to have you point out a character's first appearance who's going to come back instead of a character's last appearance.
It's so novel, right?
Yeah.
It's so great. So they all sit down and with Frank, and you know this about me. I don't like watching cringe compilations. I don't like people being weird in public. I am not a fan of like YouTube prank channels. I don't leave people alone. Let people do their business. The scene that follows almost makes it into the category of not unwatchable, but it almost becomes I don't like watching it because of how just uncomfortably awkward it is. It's Frank and Hawkeye and Trapper pretending to be friends, and Henry laughing at weird times, which causes Hawkeye, Trapper, and Frank to laugh at weird times, especially Frank, because Frank just laughs weird already. It's yeah, I don't like it. It's just weird. And you have Henry he's putting his thumb in the butter. He's calling people by the wrong name. They're going to open. Pearson Tire. Yeah, it just they're gonna open a a a doctor's office after the war. The three war buddies. It's like, no, just stop it. This falls into that same like uncomfortable viewing experience of watching like a bad troop skit at troop campfire. Like, just make it stop. Make it stop. The acting is bad. Make it stop. And Captain Hildebrand through all this is just sitting there eating, looking back and forth like, what is happening? Stop. You're embarrassing yourselves. We then get a nice little montage of, despite their promise, Hawkeye and Trapper nailing Margaret's tent door shut with Frank and Margaret inside. We get that's really all we get. Is there another prank? Hang on, I'm just realizing this. There's that one prank. Hang on, I'm skimming. We see a nurse and a soldier talking to each other while the announcement says Yom Kippur services will be offered for all Jewish members of the Hebrew faith. We see Frank taking boots from the nurse's showers? And that's enough. Those two things plus breakfast are enough for Captain Hildebrand to be like, you're all insane. Which, okay, I guess. But basically, the hammer drops. Hildebrand says, you're all ill-befitting members of the United States Army and medical professionals. You have childlike antics, and not in like a good way, in like an embarrassing, sad, you're adults, you should be behaving better kind of way. And he says it's understandable to some degree, but you guys have taken it too far. And I love during all this is one of my favorite gifs to use of Hawkeye. He's sitting there in his Hawaiian shirt doing the nails of the skeleton, which I love. He's just filing the nails of the skeleton. So this is one of those moments where, as I'm discussing an episode, I'm realizing like, wow, they went from A to B to C to wrapping up the episode real quick. And this will be more toward when I give my rating, but I don't know how I feel about how this episode's like pacing was. Like, I understand that it was basically a second pilot, but it's a little, I don't know. And maybe we can discuss it once we get to the end of the episode, but I feel like we went from Hildebrand's coming, we spent a long time setting up that Hildebrand is here, and now all of a sudden the shoe is dropped and we didn't really get anything in between other than the weird breakfast scene. But yeah. Henry is still trying to bail water out of this ship, but Hildebrand says, no, it's over. You guys are all insane. It is my recommendation that you guys be split up because you guys clearly are not working well together. Hawkeye tries to reason that the only reason we're all here is because the powers that be couldn't, maintain normality and peace. And it's all starting to devolve. Margaret's blaming Radar for spying on everyone. Everyone's blaming each other. And then Wounded show up and the switch flips, which is one of my favorite things about MASH. How you can be going from the crazy, the switch flips, and the Wounded arrive. And then we get a scene that we're going to get a lot of times throughout the show, a non-MASH camp member experiencing what MASH truly is in surgery. But since this is really one of the first times we kind of get that, what did you think of Hildebrand discovering the horrors of war, so to speak?
I think it's a very well done scene. I have some thoughts on the overarching story as a whole and as you do also, as you've said, that I'll hold until the end. But it's a very good exposition of their prowess because, we've been in the operating room several times, and I would argue that more often than not, with the exception of, say, Sticky Wicket, it's been, a joke or them poking fun at Frank or Frank being an asshole. But you're seeing them be very competent and, Henry actually acting like a superior in the sense of he's going around and helping
And
where he can.
I'd argue, even Frank. even
Yeah.
Frank in this scene is like, someone asked Frank, how you doing? He's like, oh, fine. He gives a very, very normal answer, not not, as we'll see in future seasons, a very frank, stressed out. Yeah, Henry asks, how's it going, Frank? He just says, he's fine, young.
Yep.
Which is it's one of the most unfrank lines that Frank says, honestly, so far. Like, he seems like he's actually focused and paying attention and competent in this scene, which, again, we talked about it when we talked about Larry Linville and Frank in the season 1 wrap-up. It would be nice if they gave Frank that some more. Would you excuse me for just a moment?
Yeah, please.
Sorry, my dad called me 2, almost 3 times in a row, so I figured I should probably answer that in case something was up. But we were talking about Frank.
Yes.
Yeah, this surgery scene is nice because it's showing the unit, and it's the point of the episode is no matter how they act outside of surgery, they act like a fluid machine in surgery. Even when they are poking fun at Frank in other episodes, things are getting done. I did notice something about this surgery scene though, and even in the first surgery scene of the episode, and I don't know if it's just because they haven't spent enough time in the OR as a whole yet with the show, but they're really obsessed with sponges. Did you notice that? Margaret's screaming about sponges, Henry's screaming about sponges, all the surgeons are screaming. Like, I understand, so when they say sponges, it's essentially a big wad of gauze or a big cotton ball. It's used for exactly what it sounds like, soaking up excess fluid, blood, etc.
Yeah.
And it's important that if you're given 12 sponges on your operating tray and you use them, you need to make sure that there are 12 sponges in your bucket. You have to keep a sponge count, right? Because you don't want to sew up a patient with what is basically a camouflage chunk of cotton inside their gut, right?
Mhm.
So that's why there's, like, it makes sense that they're screaming about sponges, but I'm going to say something it's probably going to piss off a lot of MASH fans. You hear Margaret go, "We need more sponges here," like 3 times in this episode, and I swear to God, that's either Loretta Swit's go-to in surgery line, or they use that sound clip for background ADR for the rest of eternity. Now that I've said that, it's gonna be like the Wilhelm scream of MASH. I guarantee you're gonna hear, "We need more sponges here," in the background of every surgery scene until the end of time. And maybe I'm just hyper fixating on it, and that's not true. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I've heard this sound clip in other episodes. So yeah, there's that.
I'm gonna listen to it now.
Margaret is worthy of a lot of the go-to like sound clip, like, "Oh, Frank," and now we need more sponges here. It just, ugh. So Hildebrand sees all this, and he is rightfully just. I love how they're able to convey how horrifying it is to someone who's never been there without actually showing us any of the blood and gore, which is impressive, I think.
Yeah.
The most we'll get for gore in this season is blood. We don't ever see like a gaping injury, which again, this is the 70s and 80s of television. You weren't showing that on primetime TV. I don't think we see anyone actively get shot in the show, which I know could technically be a spoiler because there are situations where someone definitely could. But the fact that they're able to convey this without actually showing it, it's almost almost the opposite, but it isn't, of the whole show don't tell principle in movies. They're showing us how horrifying it is, but they're also not showing it. They're showing us via Hildebrand's reactions, which is insane to me. But
Yeah.
it's done really well. And this goes back to the one-time actors are really good at conveying their inner monologues, essentially, with half their face covered. That is going to be a recurring thing in these OR scenes. It's just how well you can tell what's going on with different characters just by their eye and eyebrow emotion, which is crazy. But General Clayton rolls up to camp at the end of surgery, wants to check in on Hildebrand. It's been a day. Hildebrand hasn't even been there 24 hours yet, which is okay, whatever. as far as we can tell. They're looking for Hildebrand. Turns out he's in the swamp drinking gin. Which, as he says, they make a gin that can melt your dog tags, and Clayton is genuinely upset that Hildebrand has basically screwed off his mission, but he really hasn't, because he tells the general, I've observed these guys. They are insane. I've seen textbooks. I love this. I've seen textbooks examples of voyeurism, fetishism, and a few isms I've never even heard of. I've seen textbook examples of neuroses, psychoses. They're all mad, and the only thing they're impossible people doing impossible things in an impossible place, and the only thing that would be crazier than them is the act of splitting them up, which is basically, this is going to happen more than a few times where some outside force comes to MASH and tries to change it, but they're like, no, the reason we're as good as we are is because we are as good as we are. Don't mess with this. And
Such a good line.
The thing that does boggle my mind a little bit about this is Hawkeye and Trapper say the same thing they did at the end of the season 1 pilot, where they said they screwed up in reverse.
Yep.
Were they trying to get split up? Which, okay, yeah, maybe you get sent to a non-combat unit, but like, that's kind of shitty for everyone else. And how are you going to guarantee if they're splitting up anyone, they're splitting up you two, you dumbasses. So yeah, I don't know, but it serves its purpose. The unit's not getting split up. They all drink a toast to the unit, and we get the outro scene, which is kind of a different type of outro. We get the little narration of what MASH is as we go through all the characters in the show.
Yep.
I don't think we got not McLean Stevenson, Father McKay. I don't think we got William Christopher in that read-off at all, if I'm remembering correctly. No, we just got the mains. And William Christopher wasn't in this episode as Father McKay anyway, so that works. But yeah, that's Divided We Stand. And I know this is, again, if you've been listening for the last 40 minutes, this is one of those episodes where I took over and just kind of sped through it, because I think, based on some of the things you said, Ethan, we're kind of in the same place. It's not a bad reintroduction to the season or to the series, but because of it's serving as an introduction, I don't like how it's paced out. Would that be that's my, what do you think about it?
Well, so I've said it before and I'll say it again. I am always inclined to like episodes that have a very strong comedy foot forward. And there were quite a few lines in this episode that I thought were hysterical, and I thought, just from a comedy standpoint, it was very good. I took a little bit of issue with, because it's a reintroduction episode. I get that it's the pilot of season 2, but it just seems to me like this is the third time, by my count, that we have had somebody come to camp and threaten to break them up. And this episode especially felt so much like the original pilot that
which other episodes?
I remember so the first episode, if I remember correctly.
Oh, because Hamilton was threatening to arrest Hawkeye and Trapper. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was the second episode with the different general who we never saw again, whose name eludes me. When he was also
No, because Barker was there. Barker was there he came twice. He came to have Trapper fight his guy. Yeah. And then he came to see why Hawkeye was made chief surgeon. I would argue the other episode that would fit that is when they were trying to take Hawkeye away in Bananas, Crackers, and Nuts.
Okay.
But that was more of an internal struggle rather than that was orchestrated by Frank and Margaret. Well, as opposed to an outside for it.
Then for the sake of levity, I'll say, yeah, you're right, I'm off base, and this is the second time they've been threatening to break them up in some way or another. But they were saved, from all of their bullshit antics, from all their craziness, because they are very competent surgeons, which is very fair. But if you're going to do the same thing again, at least don't make it another pilot or leave some more time between the two episodes, because it felt like this episode and the season 1 pilot could be more or less interchangeable.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. I think this falls, weirdly enough, this falls into a similar category for me as Tuttle does, where this isn't a bad episode. I like it. It's funny. I did blaze over some of my favorite comedy lines. I love the when they're in Hildebrand, when Hildebrand's in Henry's office and Henry's trying to justify Klinger's existence. He's like, no, it's okay. He likes to go out with girls, and Hildebrand just looks up and goes, he must be stealing their clothes.
It's my personal favorite was Trapper very sincerely going, "Oh, don't worry, he always acts funny in the men's shower," when we're talking to Henry at the beginning.
Which that's again, MASH, and this is an interesting season to bring this up. We've said this in season 1. MASH is not shy of making some homosexual-esque jokes, which there's an episode this season where we're going to have a long conversation about homosexuality. I am already doing research for that episode, and I already know who I would like to have on as a guest for that episode.
I cannot wait.
But it's like episode 21, so we're like 10 months away from that. But the other one that sticks out in that vein is at some point, I think it's Margaret, it points at Hawkeye and it's like, he tries to molest every nurse in this post. And Trapper goes, well, that's kind of true. And Hawkeye's like, well, not the male ones. Oh no, Trapper goes, not the male ones. And he goes, and Hawkeye says, speak for yourself. And it's like, oh, all right, Hawkeye. My other favorite is when Frank says, I, for one, did not crack under pressure. And Hawkeye and Trapper respond with, yeah, he came here fracked with a Bible in one hand and a pair of shorts that said, hold me in the other. I love that.
I've spent too much time at an American college around blonde sorority girls with booty shorts that say stuff across the back to just picture.
You're
Frank
imagining
turns.
sorority booty shorts,
yeah,
not like
with
oh,
like
no.
a bedazzled hold me across the ass. It was an uncomfortable
stop
vision.
talking. I hate it. Well, there goes there. Let me cross off that merch idea. Hang on.
Oh.
No fatigue shorts with hold me printed across them in military script font, because now
Come on, please.
No, you did this to yourself.
Yeah, okay.
No, it's a funny episode. I just don't like if I go back, Clayton introducing the cast to Hildebrand is 5 minutes of the episode. Less than that because of the title sequence. So it's like
Sure.
3.5 minutes of the episode. By the time Clayton's actually done talking and we get to where it's real time Hildebrand's in Henry's office, we're like 6 minutes into the episode. So we're already a quarter of the way through the episode. And by the time we've set up that what Hildebrand's there to do, and so essentially setting up the chessboard, we've set up Hildebrand's side of the chessboard. And then Henry goes and talks to the officers and sets up their side of the chessboard. By the time that's all done, we're halfway through the episode. And then we get weird breakfast scene. One prank and whatever the hell Frank was doing in the nurses' showers. And that was enough justification for Hildebrand to be like, you're all crazy. I think there's 2 episodes I'm comparing this to in my mind. One is the season 1 pilot, and the other is Chief Surgeon Who, which is a not fair comparison to make, but the reason I'm drawing parallels to that is outside person, General Barker, Captain Hildebrand, seeing the camp for what it is, and then making a judgment and then being proven wrong on that judgment. I feel like it's unfair to compare this episode to those two because it has to be written the way it is because, like they said, it's a new time slot, a lot of new viewers, they have to reintroduce the show. So I'm kind of stuck. It's funny, it's a good episode, but the things I don't necessarily like about it, I understand why they were done because they had to do it that way if they wanted to get people hooked into the show.
Yeah,
That
and
makes sense?
well, you make a very fair point, and it's a very valid point. The problem is, and I'm so used to the digital form of media and having everything I want at my fingertips all the time that those kind of thought processes don't go through my head, and so I'm only willing to cut them so much slack for it, even if at the time, 50 years ago, they had a very viable, valid reason to do what they did.
So I'll just let's just pull the teeth that we have to pull for this. What would you rate Divided We Stand? And based on what you and I say, I can already tell that I think we're leaning away that the audience is not.
Yeah,
But what would you rate Divided We Stand?
I'm going to give it a good amount of leeway, because of how funny it is, and if I don't think too critically, if I just shut off my brain and kind of get out of my own ass for a second and think, oh, this is just like the original pilot. It's a funny episode. It's a good episode. Hildebrand is a good character, and I'm sad I'm not going to see him again. I think this is a 3.9 for me.
Okay.
Yeah, it's funny. I think you have some very valid concerns about the pacing, but just as an episode, I enjoyed it. I would watch it again. 3.9.
Okay. I am gonna say 3.5, which is I just double checked. That's the same rating I gave the season 1 pilot. And I'm not giving it the same as the season 1 pilot because I think they're on par. I think this, like the season 1 pilot, I think this episode did a good job of here are the characters, this is essentially a very diluted version of MASH as a whole as it sits right now. There's chaos and goofiness and stuff happening outside of surgery, but at the end of the day, these are what these people are here for, and they are good at it, regardless of what happens outside surgery, right?
Right, yeah.
And I think this is does a decent job of introducing us to the characters, being funny, but also being just serious enough in the operating scenes to give us that taste of, hey, this isn't like a Hogan Sears or McHale's Navy. There is a little bit of seriousness. But
yeah,
again, there are much better episodes of MASH than this. There are a few worse episodes of MASH than this, so I'm going to say 3.5. You said 3.9. I'm going to tell you right now, you and I are two of the lowest 3 ratings that this episode got. So we are at odds. We are at odds with the audience on this one. The audience is, and again, I kind of like when we were talking about Tuttle earlier. I'm not like confused as to why people like this episode. Just for me personally, it didn't click as much. And you're fine. You're 3.9. You're actually closer to the audience than I am. But let me read through some of these real quick.
Well, if the audience is so big, then why won't it fight me?
Some of them might.
Oh boy.
This lightsaber kills fascists. Mike Jameson says 5 out of 5. An ingenious way to start season 2 and introduce the characters introduce the characters and tone to new viewers, gained by the placement of the show on Prime Saturday night slot. Some absolute classic lines, beginning of a great season. 4 out of 5. This can be considered a second plot and reintroduces the cast, says Chief Smash Forever. Love everyone working together to try to play nice. Some funny moments, strong start to the season. Donut Eater says 3.75. Kind of reminds me of the latter half of Chief Surgeon Who. Same. We see an outsider reacting to the camp's craziness. I feel this feels more naturally MASH, as they've solidified their identity in writing at this point. Not a favorite, but very enjoyable. Sean Johnson. Oh, I did not see this one. This is a new rating, hot off the press rating that I forgot to add. 2 out of 5. Doing my own watch through MASH and ranking the episodes as I go. Currently in season 3. This was my second least favorite of season 2. Interesting. I appreciate it being a second pilot. but overall, a bare bones story I found forgettable. Okay. Interesting. I don't disagree with any of these so far. Would you? Is that kind of where you're
No, yeah,
thinking?
they're all doing a pretty good job saying things that I think that I didn't even realize I thought.
Great reintroduction to the characters, good plot setup, great lines. Says MASH fan 716. No Mulcahy, no Klinger, but ooh, they could have used a different character for Hildebrand. Interesting. Interesting comment, MASH fan. I'm not saying exactly what you typed for reasons, but yeah, that would have been interesting, especially since we meet this person later in the season. Very interesting thought there, MASH fan, and I don't disagree. I think that would have been fun.
Yeah, sorry. He has to kind of censor some
Don't worry,
stuff because I am
it
new.
won't be too long. You'll understand that comment will make a lot more sense in about 5 or 6 episodes.
I'm gonna hold
Big
you
Beard-
to that.
Big Beard Booty Daddy says 4 out of 5. A fun reboot to the show. Chad Smith says 4 out of 5. Second pilot. He finds the second pilot bookended scenes a bit jarring. Hildebrand's shock and realization came on a bit too suddenly. In later seasons, the writers would have included a couple more vignettes to drive the point home. Yeah, I think Chad nails what I was trying to say earlier. He said it in a much better way than I could have. Thank you, Twitter, for forcing him to put it in as few sentences. I think they spent too long on setting up what Hildebrand was doing and not enough time showing the goofiness and then the seriousness, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
They spent so long saying this is who the characters are and this is what they're about and this is who they are, and Hildebrand's here and Henry's not going to be able to trick him, and then by the way, they're goofy and then they're good at surgery and Hildebrand's okay with it. I think Chad Smith has a good point. I think it didn't do a good job showing us MASH and spent too much time telling us what Hildebrand was going to be up to. But yeah, that was a very wide from 2 to 5 across the board on ratings. That is interesting. Okay. And again, I don't disagree with anything anyone said. I think we're all in agreement that it's a good episode, good introduction to season 2. Maybe just the story itself was weak. And then whether you rate it a 5, a 4, a 3, a 2, more comes down to your tastes in TV and comedy and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't disagree with anything anyone has said about this. Would you concur?
I would concur. It's also really nice to be getting so many audience ratings for an episode.
Yeah. For comparison, the season one pilot, we had 5 audience reviews. This time we have 8, 9 if you count the guy that rated it 10 out of 5 on Instagram. Sorry, sir, I did not. Your rating was a statistical outlier and should not be counted.
Yeah.
No, I counted it as a 5 out of 5. But yeah, I'll say I'm a little boggled by the couple of the 2 5s we got. One from Instagram, one from Mike. I think 5 is maybe a little too. Like, I get it, but 5 is where I start to scratch my head. But then again, people are probably scratching their head at the 2 and the 3.5 I gave it. So whatever. We're all here. We love MASH. That's the whole point. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. So yeah, that's Divided We Stand. I'll be honest, I'm glad we're done with this episode because I cannot wait. So Ethan, let's just get what episode are you on actually because I have a feeling you've watched much further into season 2 than the first episode.
I'm gonna be honest.
Are you on season 3? Be honest.
No, I have been really trying to watch this in quote unquote real time. However, 5 o'clock Charlie is as our loyal fans will know, the next episode, and it is one of the episodes I remember from my time as a child.
Okay.
It came on
How
after the
can you
Dukes of
not?
Hazzard. And honestly, I am just so excited. So I have not watched beyond episode 2, and I will refrain from as best I can.
you are allowed to watch as far as you like, but you are not allowed. I'm gonna say you're not allowed to watch the end of season 3. You
Well,
cannot watch the. You cannot watch. I'm just to be safe. You can't watch the last 3 episodes of season 3. If you get a wild hair up your butt and decide you're gonna watch a bunch of MASH, you cannot watch the end of season 3 until we get there on the podcast. I am
Well-
gatekeeping you from watching past that
well, that's
for
fair.
very good reasons.
And I'll tell you, I'm gonna try to, because I mean, I know our audience probably doesn't care, but I'm trying to keep my reactions as genuine and in real time as possible. You know, so we'll see what happens.
So yeah, next episode's 5 o'clock Charlie. I'm hoping we have a guest on for that. I think we will. There's some real life things going on that might make it so we don't, but that's all right. We're still going to talk about it regardless. Make sure you pay attention on the Twitter and the Instagram and all that jazz. I'm trying to be a little more broad in putting stuff out there to get people's ratings and remind people that the show exists. If you would like to help with that, please, if you're not already, follow us on all the socials. We're Best Care Anywhere on almost all social media. We're at Best Care 4077 on Instagram and Twitter. Send us your ratings. Share the podcast with friends. If you're listening on a podcast app, however you rate podcasts and leave a review, do that. That would be awesome. A lot of the podcast places are not easy. I hate Apple and I hate Google. They're very hard to navigate from the back end as far as I'm concerned. But from what I've seen, we've gotten mostly all 5-star, I think all 5-star ratings from what I've seen. So yay, thank you.
Hallelujah.
And if you're watching / listening on YouTube, genuinely, I know this, you hear this on every YouTube video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment. Leave your thoughts on the episode under there as well, because YouTube likes, the more of those things you do, and especially if you do more than one of them, YouTube really likes that. YouTube also really likes it if you listen through the whole episode without stopping. So, yeah, there's been a lot of support for the show. I appreciate it so very much. I am so looking forward to continuing this journey with y'all and watching the show. On that note, the last thing I need to address. We mentioned last episode that Jared is taking a hiatus for a couple episodes. I appreciate the emails and comments and messages that we received offering for people to join us as a guest. We got a lot of them.
Really?
Let me put it this way. More than I am capable of managing currently in my position in my work-life balance. I'm going to put a blanket statement out there. I have seen all these comments. I have not responded to any of them, but I've seen them. Message received. That is something Ethan and I and Jared eventually will have to talk about. We would like to have more people on, but it's not going to be an every episode thing, and it's going to be kind of based on how like, for example, Ethan's traveling this episode. We had to keep changing the recording time. This would have been a bad episode to have a guest. There's other episodes that are just not, like, I wouldn't have had a guest on Edwina unless they were really passionate about Edwina for some reason.
And if you were passionate about Edwina, I want you to stay far fucking away from me.
So, message received from a lot of you. We will be looking into that. It's just going to be once Ethan's done traveling and all that jazz. So,
yeah,
if you reached out, pay attention. Don't call us. We'll call you. Sound good? Everyone on board with that? Awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got nothing else. Anything you need to share before we get out of here, Ethan?
We made it. It seems like a long time ago because, as our audience has probably figured out, Anthony does literally everything for this podcast. And so you just mentioned off the cuff one day that most podcasts don't make it past, what was it, 7 episodes?
Seven. The average number of episodes for podcasts is 7. And that's when you count the ones that do one episode and never touch it again, and then Joe Rogan that's on like episode 1002 or whatever he's on.
Yeah, so here we are going full steam ahead into season 2. It's I don't know. I think we're having a good time, and it sounds like there are people out there who are unhinged enough to actually enjoy listening to us. So it's a good feeling.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for listening. Join us 2 weeks from now when we talk about 5 o'clock Charlie. We'll see you then. Have a good rest of your day, week, month, year, whatever. And we'll talk to you in the next one. Bye-bye.
The time has come for us to say sayonara.